lovely humans, coming at you with a post-work drive chat. And today was a different, hold on, let's adjust this. Today was a little bit of a different day for me. I spent the day getting first aid training because I'm going on a trip for work. And first aid, obviously you're responding to situations of people being hurt, and it can bring up, thoughts about traumatic incidents that you've heard of happening or have happened to someone you know or yourself. And the instructor that we had, he was good at his job. He's very thorough, and he's also practical and I think grounded in reality, and that was all fine. But I felt like there were a couple instances where he kind of went, I feel like overly graphic than he needed, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I think he wanted to hit home the seriousness of some of the injuries we could encounter, and by responding quickly and getting, calling 911, just in case, if we're not sure if something's serious, when in doubt, call 911 kind of thing to get backup support. I think that was just sort of a part of his shtick and wanting us to take it seriously. But I found myself a couple moments throughout the session, and he was asking people, have you encountered things like this, or just describing, what you would see of, what would you see in a victim who had damage to their skull, for example, and, looking for fluid leaking out of their ears or their nose or their tear ducts, or what someone having a seizure looks like, and the result of seizures, and when brain damage occurs and things like that. And I was finding that to be bringing up a lot of emotions for me, and instead of just picturing some faceless victim, I was picturing my brother in those scenarios, because he went through an accident 2 years ago and has suffered brain damage. Anyway, those things are coming up, and I was like, oh gosh, I could feel in my body. Oof, I feel triggered. I feel like the lump in my throat, the wanting to disengage from the content, and really was trying to notice how I was feeling, but not let myself slip entirely into the feelings, and try and keep that separation. And I got back to my car, and I just kind of made the connection between the Brene Brown Atlas of the Heart book that I was reading recently, and how I was feeling. And in the book, she goes through all the different kinds of, and I'm so sorry, you're probably going to get my air freshener swinging into view a couple times. But she goes through a list of, I think it's 60-something human emotions, and I feel like this book would be so cool and such a very beneficial piece of material to provide to an alien civilization to understand the human condition, or I don't know, would it help sociopaths, or people who are really, I think it would be really helpful for anyone who's really detached from their emotion to understand and be able to name the different emotions. But anyway, she went through empathy as one of the emotions, and I was listening to the book, and I think she said something along the lines of how, empathy, I think, is a bit misinterpreted these days, and I think people overuse it as a badge of honor, meaning that they feel things really deeply. And I think, okay, and my interpretation of that section in her book was, she was trying to say that empathy is deeper than sympathy, in that sympathy you just feel bad and it's almost like pity for somebody else. And empathy, like you can understand, you can conceptualize why something would be difficult for somebody, or like relate and understand what that's like. But empathy does not require you to completely take on and take in the emotions of others. And if you are doing that, you're going to lead to empathy fatigue and compassion fatigue, which is not a good thing. Like, it means that, like, when you get that, she's kind of talking about how, I don't know, it's an indicator that you've been acting like a sponge and taking it all in, and that's not necessarily your job. Like, sometimes you're not going to be able to control that, and I don't know, maybe it's not like bad's maybe a strong word, but I think maybe people should be more cautious or aware of the fact that, like, empathy is good, right? It helps us understand and relate to other people, and maybe not leap to judgment right away or whatever. But if we're equating, feeling the feelings of others and taking it on with empathy, then that's not the healthiest way of looking at it, and it's going to lead to burnout. And like, there's so much bad happening in the world. There always is, but I think sometimes as empaths, maybe stop watching the news or listening to the news or engaging with negative content because we feel that we're taking it in, and that gets exhausting. And I completely understand that because I've been there. But maybe that's not the issue, and we shouldn't leap to avoidance. Maybe what we need to work on is, how do we maintain our boundaries and our window of tolerance, and work on ourselves to be able to engage with upsetting content or triggering content in a way that is, we can still understand and relate to or empathize with the content, but not take all of the emotions on, or let what we're ingesting trigger all these whirlwind of emotions. Because I don't want to avoid the news. I don't want to avoid engaging as a conscious, aware citizen with what's going on around me. I want to be able to face the hard things and do it in a sustainable way. And I am someone that cares. And so I don't think there's a way that I'd ever be able to do that without caring at all about, the shitty things happening in the world that I'm hearing about. But are there ways that I can do it maybe in more like bite-sized amounts, or in more like finding content that's maybe less graphic about how it presents some of the things happening in the world, or there's things that I can do to ground myself before, during, and after engaging with potentially emotionally triggering content. And I don't know, I think just that connection I just made today on my walk back from the first aid course, I think is going to be really helpful to me, because I've been feeling bad about avoiding consuming world news on a regular basis, because I studied political science, for God's sakes. Like, I definitely used to be, and I don't know if there's still that part of me that feels it's very important to know what's going on in the world. Oftentimes there may not be much that I can do about it, but it's nevertheless, I think, important as a citizen to be engaged and informed. And it's really hard to do that when you are constantly so heart wide open. And I think you can have your heart wide open. It's just you're not letting in all of the stimulus around you, or letting it affect your emotional state. Like, how do you maintain equilibrium? And that's really hard. I'm sure parents, that is a constant challenge when you're dealing with stress and screaming toddlers and kids that will trigger and push your buttons and criticize you and all the things. How do you maintain that equilibrium and that emotional regulation? That's super tough. But I think the issue of news and consuming negative news stories, there's a parallel there, and we can still care, and we can still be empathetic and understanding and relate to the struggles of others, but we don't need to take them on as our own. That's not our job most of the time. And often people don't want you to take on their shit. They just want you to listen and hold space. So anyway, just a little thing that took 10 minutes for me to talk about, but give me something to reflect on. Are you someone that's kind of foregone reading the news because you felt like, oh gosh, this is just so much negative shit, I don't know how to handle and process? And are there tools that you can use to ground yourself and I don't know, still be informed about what's going on in the world, but not let it impact your emotional state? Maybe there's ways you can consume the negative and then flip it and just use it as a perspective tool of like realizing how grateful you can be about where you are in this world. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to stay on top of everything, but I don't know. More and more, I just think being able to regulate your emotions is such an important skill in work, in your relationships. If you want to be a parent, if you want to be a human that is not pulled in all these directions of distraught in this, often chaotic and ever-changing world, so important. And I feel like kids should be taught more about being in tune with their feelings and how to regulate their emotions from an early age. Like, that should be part of school, I don't know if it is now. I'm not super in touch with what the education system is like at the elementary and high school level, but anyone listening who's in education, add it to the list. I wish I learned it. So anyway, but I mean, obviously it's a lifelong journey, so that would just be the starting of the journey. But I think it would normalize a lot and just help us all. Anyway, there's my soapbox rant. I'm so glad I'm leaving work and it's not pitch black. Wow, it makes such a difference. And yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.